What's up, studs and studettes? This episode is going to be a little bit deeper than some of the other ones. I typically like to bring people on to talk about really cool stuff, really cool lessons, really cool, things that are going on. And the guest I brought on today is somebody that I've met through Apex and somebody that I look up to and respect wildly. But he's somebody who's had to reinvent himself several times when most people wouldn't. It's a story I can relate to, maybe not the level he's going to share today. But ultimately I had what quote unquote wild success in corporate America, but I was living outside integrity with myself and I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. And I hated myself for it when on the outside I had everything I was supposed to have. I had the Cadillac and the house and the job and the corner office and all the other crap that comes along with corporate America. But there was still that burning desire inside of me that said, I'm capable of more than this. And I don't know all the story, but I understand that this gentleman has been through a lot of reinventing himself when many would have just sat there and accepted, this sucks, but I can't walk away because it's just too good. But like those two, that sentence doesn't go well. It doesn't sit well with me, right? It's too good to walk away because it sucks. What? Doesn't make any sense. So Sammie Knight, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You
Thank
have
you.
a wild background, but give people a little kind of high level overview of who you are and kind of what you've been doing and what kind of got you here at a high level. A lot's got you here,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. So I'm the old guy in the room when we talk about Apex, but I'm proud of that. Married my high school sweetheart, 2 children, changed, not jobs, changed careers more times than most, different industries. Have 2 grandchildren, back living in my hometown. Very fortunate, very blessed man. Did, like a lot of people, have a lot of screw ups along the way, but kept kicking and scratching and clawing. And I'm an entrepreneur now, and I just love it. I absolutely love it. So that's a high level, quick, down and dirty.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it. I was going to bring it up. Like one of the things that I do respect about you the most is you very rarely see somebody of your age and success and stature in these rooms trying to get better. Very rarely do you see that at the level that you're doing it right now. And as a young guy who's like on the other side of that bell curve right now, to see that, okay, this isn't going to end. And I'm excited about that because people like you are showing up and doing it on the other side of that bell curve is super exciting for me. And it motivates me to want to stretch more and learn more and become more, because you're decades ahead of me and still trying to get better, which means I got a lot of growing to do. And it's exciting for me. But so in the concept of the changing of careers, changing of jobs, continue to try to reinvent yourself, where did that start? You obviously have done it several times, but I'm sure it's gotten easier as you've proven to yourself you can do it. So where did that start? Were you always like that? Were you always entrepreneurial in an entrepreneurship type role, or kind of how did that begin for you?
Oh, not really. I grew up in a small town, and my dad worked for the telephone company. Met my high school sweetheart when we were 16, married her when we were 20, went to 2 years of junior college and didn't like school, and jumped out there and said, I'm going to get married instead, and got married and did not even have a job. The day I walked down the aisle, I was unemployed.
Was your father-in-law excited about that, or was that a concern of his?
He and I didn't spend a lot of time talking about certain things. And thank goodness we didn't. My wife had a job. She's a nurse. And anyway, I applied for a job with the telephone company, just like my dad. I'm a small town guy. And I thought, I'll just work for them forever and retire and do just like everybody does, Went to work for them. 3 years and 11 months. AT&T divested the baby bells because Uncle Sam felt like there's a better way to do it than their success path. And so they divested the baby bells, and everybody that had 4 years or less experience was automatically let go and told, go find another job.
You were 3 years and 11 months?
3 years and 11 months. I was
Jeez.
already slated to go into their management program. And 1 month away, and they whacked it. I went home. Of course, talked to my dad, talked to my wife. I was like, man, what am I going to do? I didn't know anything else really. And there wasn't jobs like that around here. You know, I'd already bought a house, and I had a little bit of a skill, and it was pulling wires through houses and pre-wiring homes for telephones. And at that time, there was a lot of construction, and a couple of local guys gave me a couple of telephone jobs in houses they were building to pull the wires. And that was enough to get me by for about 90 days. And I just kept digging and digging and digging. And I finally realized, you know, I'm not going to lose this battle. I'm going to win. I don't know where, but I'm going to win. And I'm going to have to dust myself off, quit trying to drown in my sorrows, and go find a job. And so a buddy of mine said, hey, there's a insurance adjuster job that Hartford Insurance is looking for. We have a claims office here. And but you got to have a 4-year degree. I said, get me an appointment with that guy. I think I can do that. I didn't know anything about adjusting insurance claims. I had no idea. I knew how to put phones in a house. That's it. And so I went in and I applied for the job and got down to the final 3 interviews and sat down with the guy. And he told me, he said, well, you know, you don't have a college degree, so chances are you're not going to have a chance at this. But there's some people in the office that know you, so this is out of a courtesy. And boy, that pissed me off, telling me I can't do it. So it just so happened that their largest law firm that they worked with, the guy that owned it, was a friend of mine. And so I gave him a call. I said, man, if there's anything you can do. He said, well, I don't know if I can pull this off. And I said, just tell him. That's all I need to do is just tell him. Well, I got the job. Not only did I become a claims adjuster, but I also got on their storm team and traveled around the South and worked storm claims. Like, I knew what the hell I was talking about, but I learned it, you know.
Why were you so sure about that opportunity? Because you pulled some strings, you called in some favors, like you went all in. Was it just because they told you you couldn't and you had to beat them? Or were you sure like this was a career path you wanted to take?
First step, I needed a job.
So it was just like, this is a job that they're hiring. I want it.
They're going to pay me. I needed a job. And so I was going to get that job. Then when I got in it, you know, each one of these steps I took along my life, I learned something very valuable that I used at the next step. I'm a very much a God-fearing man. I'm a faith-driven guy. Didn't act like it for a long time, but I'm spot on now.
That's how you become fear-based, is by doing it the wrong way.
And so I always felt like things were put in front of me for a reason. It was my job to figure out why. And I was let go with the phone company because that's not where I was supposed to be. This other opportunity came along, and that wasn't where I was supposed to be. But I was put there for a reason, and it was to learn something. And the one thing I learned from the insurance world was how to negotiate. Because as an adjuster, you go in and there's two parties in that adjustment. One side's going to hate you and one side's going to love you. There's no in between. Both sides aren't going to love you and both sides won't hate you. And so I learned how to negotiate. And it's a very powerful skill for me over my life. Well, I did that for about 2.5 years. And then it was one of those deals where I was like, okay, I'm not getting the satisfaction now. I kind of got this thing mastered. I've moved into the bigger play with the storm team. And a friend of mine I grew up with says, hey, you ever thought about getting in sales? And I said, yeah, I think I'd like that. And it was with a company called Bryan Foods. It was owned by Sarah Lee, and it was in Nashville. And so once again, looking for a college graduate, looking for somebody in the food business experience. I applied, I made some calls, a little bit of networking, learning more about networking. And just so happens that a guy that owned a store knew the president of the company real well. And he put in a good word. When I sat down and actually interviewed the last time with the vice president of sales, he looked at me and he said, "Tell me what you want out of this company." And man, I was gutsy then. I felt bulletproof. And I said, "I want to be your boss." And I'm starting at the bottom, and he laughed and he said, "There's a lot of people would like to be my boss, but that's good to wish it, but you won't ever get it." And before I left that company, I was his boss. So each step, somebody gave me a challenge.
The chip.
I couldn't do.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to sell hot dogs for a living, but I got good at it. And my wife, but there was a reason I was learning how to negotiate so I could get this sales job. Then my wife and I decided to have children. She was a nurse around x-ray machines and stuff. And I said, "I really don't want you to, us to get pregnant and you be around the x-ray machine. I'd like for you to come home." And I was really trying to be nice. And she said, "Okay." And I thought, now what do I do? Cut our pay in half. Now I got to double down. Well, you know what that taught me? I was going to work about 8 and I was getting off about 5 and traveling. Taught me to get my butt up out of bed and go to work at 5 and work till I couldn't work anymore, till everybody had gone home, and make things happen. And I took chances and little gambles. And the one thing I learned during those periods of time was there's always somebody watching you. I didn't know it then, but there's always somebody watching you, and you need to find that sponsor inside of that system that's kind of eyeballing you and saying, "I'm going to help that guy or that gal move up." And so that's how I've done it. I reached a point in the food business. I became head of sales and marketing for their international and shelf stable business. Was what they call a high pot candidate, high potential future leaders and stuff. And I went home one night, excuse me, and they had just told me I was going to get this nice path to the future, and I was really excited. So I went home, I told my wife, I said, "Hey, they're going to move us forward and we're going to move into new towns and run different businesses and part of Sara Lee." And she said, "Oh, that's nice." And I was like, she may not have heard me, didn't understand what I was saying. So I said it again. And "Oh, that's nice." And I'm watching, and my children were small and they're playing, and she's really focused on the kids. And I'm like, I don't even know those kids. And I damn sure don't know if I know her. And she wasn't excited. So I had a soul searching that night going, am I doing this for the wrong reason? And the Mossy Oak opportunity came along. The guy that founded that company at the same time, wasn't expecting it. Brilliant guy, Toxie Hayes, absolutely brilliant. And he called me one day and wanted me to take on some of the business. And I was given a minority ownership in it, and as part of the deal. And he met me at a Sonic drive-in. He was in a pickup, pair of shorts, T-shirt, had his climbing stand in the back of his truck. I'm in a suit and a tie. He's going hunting. I'm going back to the office. And we talked for about 30 minutes, and I went, I want that. I want what he's got. And he was kind and gracious enough to turn me loose and let's get this thing started. And we had just a phenomenal run. They're still a tremendous company doing incredibly well. And that's a whole story in itself. But each step I had to learn something new. But one thing I learned early on was that drive. If you got that drive to win, you'll succeed. And I got into the entrepreneurial world. I finally realized I'm not a good employee because I'm not going to bow. I'm not going to kiss butt. if you ask me, I'm going to give you an opinion. And 90% of the time, if you don't ask me, I'm probably going to give you an opinion. And my opinion's real to me. I always value people first, always have, always will. And then I'll set off on doing my own thing. And I'm just happy as a kid in a candy store, you know. It's hard every day. But that reinvention, I think what you have to do is open your mind and your eyes to see what's in front of you. And don't take everything that's in front of you just for granted. That's the way it's supposed to be. In this company, it's always going to be that way. What are you being told? What's your inner self saying? Listen to this. You're being told something. And there's a reason you're being told this. Nothing wrong with corporate America. It's a great place if that's where you want to be. It wasn't where I wanted to be. But I think that's where it kind of starts, you know. And then what did I learn at the last stop that's going to help me at the next stop?
All right. So, wow. Impressive.
Sorry if that was lengthy.
No, man, there's not a single listener right now going saying that wasn't worth it. Like what I'm hearing is your fight or flight mode is clearly slated to the fight side, right? Where did that come from? Like, was that like was it just, I'm not going to fail, I need a job, and then like it just kept growing from there? Because like you went from, you know, bottom at the food company to like, you know, C-level ecosystem, or headed towards C-level ecosystem, which I've been in corporate America. That is a vicious ride.
Yeah.
Right? Like I got promoted, I think 7 times in 9 years at Verizon. That's a vicious ride. And then you go into the Mossy Oak situation kind of at the top, which, I mean, in your mind, you had to say like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, how am I going to make this work? But you made it work. And then you went into this world where now you're in real estate, which is like probably not what you thought it was before you got into it. Right.
No.
So where does that self-belief come from? Like, was your parents, did they instill that in you as a kid? Because you don't just learn that in your first 20-year-old job opportunity that I'm going to go get this job because they told me I can't have it. That's not where you learned that.
Yeah. My dad was always one that promoted and motivated me to always do my best, even if you don't think it's good enough. Always do your best, and opportunities are out there. You just got to go find them. If you keep searching and searching, you'll find them. And when I was probably, I told this to somebody the other day, when I was probably 14, 15, 16, I was the shyest person you've ever met. Man, if you looked at me, I'd kind of tuck my tail and drop my head. And I realized when I went out with a couple of girls, you know, at 15, and I thought, man, I'm gonna have to come out of this, and none of these girls are gonna go out with me a second time. And so I met my wife at that time. I said, I'm coming out on this one. I'm gonna stop being this chicken shit, if you will. And that's probably when I started coming out of the shell a little bit. But it was always my dad, you know, that you can do anything you set your mind to. I give you a great example of my dad's thinking. When I was younger, I was tall and thin. I didn't have any bulk on me, and I wanted to play football. And so my dad came home from work one day, and I was telling him, you know, I weigh 148 pounds, and I'm 6 foot tall, and all these other guys are bigger, and I'm slow, and I'm not big enough to be on the line. I'm not fast enough to do this. And I'm telling him all this. And he said, you can believe anything and become that. I'll never forget him telling that. I said, what do you mean? He said, if you want to weigh 250 pounds, start believing you can. Start thinking that way. He said, you can get there. And I thought, you can't wish yourself into this. But I started thinking about it, and I started making decisions that got me there. Dude, when I graduated from high school, I weighed 212 pounds. when I played junior college, I got up to about 235. Later in life, I got up to 324. So I may have wished too hard. But my dad would make you believe that if that's what you want to do, you can do it, and you won't lose if you always believe and you always focus on winning. And so I always had that in me, but I really started coming out of that shell when I started dating my girlfriend, my wife. And,
didn't last long there, did it though, sir? You only dated for like 4 years and then got locked down. Like, you got pretty good at it, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I sure convinced her. I have to convince her every day I'm that guy.
All right.
Still today. But I think everywhere I went, I always felt like when I went into a opportunity that I was the underdog. And I didn't use that to benefit me and feel bad for myself. I used that to say, I'm going to have to work a little harder. I'm going to have to outdo that guy that's got that college degree to get this job. You know, when I went to work with Toxie at Mossy Oak, he wanted me to run licensing and marketing. And I said, man, that's great, because marketing was my game. And I leaned over in the truck and I said, tell me what licensing is, though. I didn't even know what I was fixing to run, but we had a great ride, did very well. And like I say, they're still killing it. But I always went into things as the underdog, and I always felt like I had to do better than the next guy.
So then there's two questions that I'm going to kind of try to walk through here. The first is, how did you become so accepting of failure? Because every time you got into these roles, you were underprepared, you had no idea what you were getting into, but you said, I'm going to make this work. So like, I guarantee in the process, you failed along the way, probably excessively. In each of these times you had to rebuild yourself. I think a lot of people struggle with striving for more, or with the confidence to reinvent themselves because, well, what if I fail? Well, like, sir, you have probably failed 10 times as often as you has won, but you just never gave up because you were determined to win. Like, how did you compartmentalize that? How did you overcome that? How did you put it in that right box? Because it clearly, at least appears like it never slowed you down. But I know for a fact, as somebody who's reinvented himself a couple times as well, failure is just part of that journey. And so many people, I think, are held back by it. So how did you overcome that initial, we'll say, rocky road up the mountain?
Golly, I wish I could tell you the secret sauce, but if I had to look at the times that I did, and trust me, I did fail a lot. I taught myself. I even reached the point years ago where I don't even use the word failure. I taught myself that that's a learning experience, and it's how do I use the term fix it on the fly. How do I fix my shortcoming on the fly? And I knew when I failed. Most of the times when I worked for somebody, they pointed it out real fast.
Yeah.
But I was always working an angle. I always had a counter to fail, if that's the word that you're thinking, that for every, I forget the terminology, but for every action, there's a reaction. So when I go into any initiative, I have a contingency in my head as strong as I do that action I'm going to take, so that I'm ready to pivot and fix it on the fly. And I think I've always been one that keeps going because I've got a contingency and I can correct that path. I can fix this. And then as people started working for me, the one thing I always promoted to the folks that work for me is you can never do anything bad enough that we can't fix. Now, they may do something bad enough that hurts them forever, but we can fix it in the position I was in and the companies and stuff like that. And it gave the people that worked for me that had the drive to win, it gave them a little more comfort that I've got their back. And I didn't say, get out there and charge. I've got your back. I just said, you can't screw up bad enough that we can't fix it. As long as you don't do one thing, you never, ever, ever think you're bigger than the brand. You can be bigger than the guy next to you, the gal next to you, the owner. Even the owner to me is not bigger than the brand. And as long as you focus on that, there's nothing we can't fix. But we got to fix it, pivot, and go. So I kind of fought away from the word failure with that.
Well, and I think the lesson, and I use it as well, is like the power of visualizing contingency plans. I learned that I was blessed to have a very successful sales career, and I learned a lot about, okay, what are the objections I might get and what would I do about it, right? Even just that little bit of visualizing a conversation. I do it in I do it in podcast interviews now. I do it when I'm talking to my kids. I do it when I'm talking to my wife. Like, I can't not do it now. If I'm going into a scenario that I'm interested in winning, I'm thinking about at least 5 to 10 ways I might lose and how I could turn it into a win before I even walk into the scenario. And I think I learned it very early on in life in baseball. I actually wrote about it in my book about, like, know what you're going to do with the ball before you get it. It was a lesson I got preached to in Little League, right? If you know what you're going to do with the ball before you get it, at every at bat, where the runner, who's this batter, where's it going, where should you be aligned, who's on the field, know what you're going to do with the ball before you get it. That's when, like, I started visualizing in life, and I completely am blessed because I undervalued it, but I use it literally in everything I do now. And I think you brought it up, the contingency planning. I call it visualizing the scenario. I think that is how you go into it, knowing you can't lose. It may not go the way you wanted it to, but I think a lot of people fail because they go into it singularly minded with only one outcome that will make them happy. And literally 100% of the time, it's never going to go the way that you want it to at a whole, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you willing to negotiate? What are you willing to compromise on? What's the middle ground that you're winning enough that you're saying, I'm happy there? I don't think enough people go into scenarios, contingency planning, visualizing, thinking about beyond just, here's what I need, and they have to do it that way. And if they don't do it that way, it's a loss. No, like, because then you lose everything you ever do, because no one ever compromises exactly the way you want them to. And if they did, you didn't ask for enough. Like,
yeah, that's right. I mean, think about it, Mike, in your past and present, is when you first started learning these things, contingency or visualizing or whatever it is, you went down one path was your strategy, but your corrective path that was over here, the gap was wide when you first started. And the better you get at it, you can't quit. When you fail or drop the ball, a lot of people screw up because they quit, because that kick in the head, even if they have a contingency, that kick in the head just devastated them. And what you do over time is that gap continues to tighten. And so the difference between your path and your contingency is so close that it doesn't look like you dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Everybody around goes, oh my God, that was the greatest thing. They didn't see you turn this one little screw over here to make it really fly, And I think if you try it, be willing to let that gap close, That's me.
And I use a little bit of a different analogy or example of it, but I think a lot of people, when they go into scenarios, let's say switching your career from adjusting to food sales, right? And they think about it, they visualize it, and they think of all the things that might go wrong. But then in their mind, they're coming back to, like, where they are right now. And they forget that when you fall off the wagon down the path, you can get back on the wagon right where you are. You don't come back to point zero. And so I think same thing, right? When the contingency plan gets closer to the actual plans, because you learned what the variables might be, but you're still down the path of that plan, and you still learned all the lessons that got you there. No matter what decision you make, you will never come back to point zero. And I don't think enough people realize that. Because I think if I do that, I'm going to end up worse than I am right now. No, you're going to be more knowledgeable. You're going to have better contingencies. You're going to have better knowledge. You have better perspective. And for you, like every time you took that chance, what's licensing?
Yeah.
And you knew what it was. You're like, okay, I know how to handle this because of the things you learned on the last path that you failed forward on. So that you're able to implement those lessons into this new, tangent of the same strategy of the life of Sammie Knight. And
when I left one company and went to another, my dad told me a long time ago as well. And when I left the first job and went to a new one, he said, I'm going to give you 2 pieces of advice. He said, always look back at that company for education and the learning that you had. Don't look back at that company to return. And what he was telling me was, don't always keep your foot back in that door, because you can say, well, if this doesn't work here, I'll go back.
Yeah.
My dad was always a big believer. You leave there. Only get your experience out of there and keep going forward. And I think a lot of people take opportunities and they say, oh man, this is a little different. I'm going to leave one foot back here. And I never did that, man. I just stuck my nose in the grinder and went. But I did go back. I mean, I did listen and look back for experience only, never to go back.
That's a good, that's like burn the ships kind of mentality of,
That's right.
We're here, we're moving forward. There is no going back.
That's exactly right. You mentioned a minute ago when we started about me joining Apex and that I'm trying to better myself, and I am. I'm truly trying to do that. I've tried to do that all my life, and that's probably how I got here. Screwed up enough along the way that every time I bettered myself, I came out a little bit farther ahead than I was the last time, But I keep going back to my dad. My dad told me a long time ago that the legacy of your life, you're going to be a good father, you're going to be a good provider, you're going to be all this stuff. He said, but when you leave this earth, what's really going to mean something is if you took the knowledge that you have with you, or you left it here with some other people to improve on it. And that's another thing I see in Apex is there's a lot of people in this group that want to help others and leave what they've learned here and willing to, man, it's just so cool to be in the Facebook post and the communication elements and going, it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care how successful you are. Everybody's ready to jump in and help you. And that's another thing that I look for.
I think it's a culture of you winning doesn't mean I'm losing.
That's right.
I don't think a lot of people have that mentality. If like your friends start winning, you start feeling like you're losing. That's not true. I think there's a certain amount of it that there is some, people get like, oh shit, he did that. Now I got to try to do better, which is part of growth, is having people to pull you along. But I don't think anybody goes, oh, he shouldn't be winning or she shouldn't be winning.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of the culture that Break Free Academy has built with the people that they've put in the executive level. Is I don't see any animosity amongst the group, and everybody, like you have people winning at all levels in that ecosystem. I mean, you got some
absolutely
next level winning going on, but it doesn't make me feel less about myself because I'm not. I'm just on a different path, or they're further ahead of me, but they motivate me to go, and they celebrate my wins just as much as I do. And I think it's just cool, like you said.
Well, I think there's no competition. The competition is, for me, it's me against myself.
Yeah.
They're just a part of my board now.
Yeah.
I used to have a board of 1 that was me. Now I've got a board of 150.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
And like, you post anything, you got 25 people ready to jump in and help you with something.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, that is, so I like that element. And so I'm learning every day. I'm eager to share more of what I know. Hopefully somebody won't step on some of the landmines I did, But I think that part of this group is so powerful. And these younger folks, it's got a lot of, can have a little rah feel. Dig down in there because it's got some damn good stuff in it.
Well, I think the niche within the niche, right? Like it's a tight knit group, and then like I've navigated to the handful of people that I relate to the most, just like you, right? You kind of navigate to the, hey, we're all over, but like these people get me.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's okay. I think it's part of any type of group that's growing. You got to find like your people within the people. And I think most people in there have their little group that they kind of relate to the most.
Sure.
But one question I have for you, and I've been trying to rack my brain around the best way to ask it, and I'm not sure exactly. So I'm going to try to just put it out there the best I can. And this is coming back from the corporate America perspective, right? You grew quickly, and we're going to use the example of, oh, you'll never be my boss. In the process of ascending the ladder, eventually you have to step on some people. And how did you decide with you? Was it core values? Was it sometimes you got it wrong? But like, how do you decide, like in corporate America, typically somebody does have to lose for you to win. Like that's just the reality. You get multiple people going for the same job, whatever it might be, right? So how do you decide, or how did you decide somebody's got to lose for me to win? How do I justify that? How do I make it okay? How do I decide? Or do you just like, I'm headed this path. If you get hurt in the way, I'm sorry.
I never was one that attacked those opportunities with the whatever falls out behind me falls out. They just weren't tough enough. I always felt like I looked at the overall picture of the business, and if their path for the company or for the division or district or whatever we're in at the time, if I didn't think it reached the objective that the company was looking for or the region or whatever, then sometimes they've got to be shown. And sometimes they get in the way of success for the business. Remember, I said nobody's ever bigger than the brand. And sometimes if you know you're right and you've got the sign off and the knowledge to get it there, sometimes there's fallout and you got to do what's best. I don't think you kick them to the curb. I think you grab them when you go by them and say, hey, I want to talk to you about how we can do this thing together, and how you pick them back up, because there's value most of these people have because they have tenure.
Yeah.
And you got to try to find their spot. But I always looked at it as the business. I own several businesses now. I'm not bigger than the brand. I'm not bigger than the LLC. I'm the guy that signs the paper. I'm the guy responsible. But at the end of the day, I'm replaceable. The brand's not. So I look at that every day. That's just like in your business, the business you have today, you're the brand, but I'm sure there's a possibility you could be replaced. Wouldn't be easy. Nothing's easy like that, but you're building value as a brand. If you always focus on building the brand, you got something to sell. Not everybody buys Sammie Knight, but they may buy Remax Experts and Motto Mortgage and Summit Management. I mean, and that's the way we've built them. I'm not saying people having their identity tied to their businesses is bad. I'm just saying you can't let it be bigger than the brand. And I always approached it that way. If this got in the way of the brand winning, you just might be a little fallout.
So this is more of I'm curious of the answer to this question. Sammie, what keeps you so motivated still and so dedicated to growth? Like, I mean, from my perspective, you've lived the life most people would have loved to live. You entered some massive companies, helped them grow incredibly. I'm sure made some money in the process. You probably don't need to work. Why are you trying so hard to continue to get out of your comfort zone and grow? Like, why?
I think I go back to what I said. I still got a lot to learn, and I still got a lot to leave. And so if I stop learning, I won't leave everything I got to leave. And this growth opportunities in business, to me, allow me to learn more, new markets, new industries, new whatever. And in so doing it, I meet a whole new group of people that I can leave what I've learned with. And that drives me. I mean, it just waking up tomorrow and looking over my shoulder and saying, there's 10 people back there that I can honestly say I think I made a difference. I'm not going to run out in front of them and wave the flag and say they're here because of me. I'm going to sit way up there in the bleachers. And when they walk out across that podium to accept their award, I'm just going to kind of sheepishly put my thumb in my suspenders and say, I think I helped them. And that's what drives me today is the opportunity to help people. I have been fortunate, and I have got had a great life, and I would change a few things I'd be a little less ignorant on, but I do have an unbelievable life, and I just get so fired up helping people. I really do, and I'll always do that. As long as that drive's there, I'm gonna keep going and keep winning.
You're gonna make me cry, Sammie. That's amazing.
You're kind.
That's impressive, sir. I mean, as you've kind of seen my brand, like I'm about helping people and helping people win and turning people into champions. And I hope I can do that for as long as you have.
Well, that's kind. I think you're doing a remarkable job. And the fact, I wish I would have done it when I was 35 or 40, not 55. You know, I look back and I think, boy, how many times I could have that I didn't help someone that I should have. And I'm so excited to see young folks like yourself that are, you know, putting these podcasts together and stretching yourself, because you're doing things that 5 years ago, if somebody said you're going to be doing this, Mike, you would have said, you're nuts.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm going to do this. But now you feel it, and you feel that reward, and reward is a lot of different forms. Some of it's money, some of it's wealth, some of it's stuff. But the best reward is that feeling in here that says they're going to be better because I had an opportunity to help them. That's all the award I need. And if I stop, there's only one person I'll be able to help, and that's me with my wife at home. And I lose those battles because she's already at the top.
No, I don't know if you've ever heard me say it, but like my mission statement as a human is I want to have an impact with every conversation I have.
You're doing great.
And I truly believe I am delivering on that. And it doesn't wear me out. Like, you know, just today, I have 11 straight hours of calls today. It doesn't tire me out. I'm energized by it. I'm fulfilled by it. It keeps me focused. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me locked in because I'm not worried about anything but the person in front of me, because it's my job to pay attention, be present, because I need to make an impact in this conversation. And I look at every decision I make like that.
But, you know, a big part of that too is today, the reason it doesn't make you tired and the reason you're energized at the first hour versus the 11th hour, today you're thinking with your heart. And when you start thinking with your heart, there is no tire. There is no fatigue.
It's a mission.
It doesn't exist. Think about your wife. Think about your family. When you think about them, you're thinking with your heart. And it's relentless energy that you have. You know what distances you would go for your wife? There's nothing out there. you wouldn't do nothing. That's not with your head, dude. That's with your heart. And that's what you're doing, helping these people. You're thinking with your heart, and they're seeing it, and they're reaching in and they're going, how come he can do it and I can't? And it doesn't take them long, and they suddenly look in your eyes, and they don't look to your brain. They see your heart. And then before you know it, you got a trail of people out there doing the same thing. You changing the world, dude. You ain't changing it one at a time. You changing the world because it's your heart. And that's awesome. I wasn't a strong enough man when I was young enough to say those words. I wasn't a strong enough man when I was young enough to say to my wife on the phone in a room full of guys that I loved her. I would mumble it. They was hang up the phone because I was like, man, they may hear me. I wasn't a strong enough man to do that. You are. And that's a big difference. And that's one thing I'll tell you. Keep doing it and don't stop.
Yes, sir. I can commit to that. Man, what a great episode, Sammie. Thank you so much. Guys, if you didn't get something from that episode, I'm stop listening to my podcast. It's not going to get much better than that.
You're nice. Thank you.
So Sammie, how does someone wants to get to know you, get involved with you? Obviously, you're in real estate and mortgages and stuff. How does somebody get in touch with you if they were interested in learning more about you?
DM me on Facebook, Sammie Knight. That's the best thing to do.
And we'll put some links in the show notes as well for you guys, so you can find him easy with his contact information. But Sammie, thank you so much. That was a great episode, and I really appreciate you opening up about your story, because I think there's a lot to learn from that.
Thank you, man. Have a great weekend, Mike. What an honor.
Appreciate it.